Welcome to episode 4 on voting. We'll be covering the basics of voting, what is voting, how you can use voting, and how it protects minorities and groups. Alright, so let's get into the basis of voting. How is voting used and what are its applications? For example, let's say we have a main motion, or the same motion we've been using, as held a fundraiser on June 4th. Okay, everyone's debated, and now it's time to vote. So, are you ready for the question? The question is on holding a fundraiser on June 4th. All in favor say aye. And then if you are for the motion, you would say aye. All opposed say no. If you're against it, if you're opposed, you would say no. The ayes or noes have it, and the motion has passed or it has failed. So, it really does come down to the outcome of the vote, and it determines how the business will transact or what will be conducted afterwards. As you can see, there are many different types of voting. There is a majority vote, which is more than half of the members of the assembly. Now, if you're curious what an assembly is, that is just the group of people that are attending the meeting, and they are part of the organization and active members in good standing, meaning that they're paying their dues, they're following the protocol, and they're following what generally need to be followed in the bylaws. And then we have two-thirds. As implied for majority, it is two-thirds of the assembly or more. And lastly, we have unanimous consent. Unanimous consent would be everyone agrees, but it's not a formal vote. We would say, we're holding unanimous consent, or whatever it may be. Are there any objections to? If there's an objection, it's not unanimous consent because not everyone agrees, and then it goes to a formal voting, such as a majority or two-thirds. Now that we got some types of voting, how can we vote? So the most general use of voting is a voice vote. It would be all in favor say aye, all opposed say no. Okay, but if it's a motion that has two-thirds, we need to be more specific, right? And we need to ensure that that two-thirds is being counted fairly. So then we go into a rising vote. All in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All opposed, please rise. You may be seated. So instead of a voice vote by verbally saying it, we are standing up to show our side. Lastly, a roll call vote would be the secretary would state your name, Mr. Worthland, and then you would say aye or no, and then the secretary would write down your vote. And then eventually it would be tallied into going into one of the categories of majority or two-thirds. Now, what are some applications of this voting? Right, so if we go back to our chart, we can see here how a main motion requires a majority as it in its general terms. The majority of the assembly would then just demonstrate they want to bring up this business, they want to act on it, and for a main motion, that's pretty broad, so it's not harming an individual if it's passed. For example, let's say we have limit or extend debate. What this would be is a subsidiary motion. So this would either extend debate, so allow for more time for debating, or limit the actual debating of each member. Now, because a minority might not want this, that's why it's two-thirds, because it has higher severity, it has higher importance, and if it is passed, it is going to affect the assembly and potential minorities. So that is why that is in place. Generally, when it does come to two-thirds or majority, whatever it may be, it can be ordered to be counted, which means the chair, instead of seeing that there's visually more or less, they would require it to be counted to make sure there's the exact amount. Something I didn't cover was if the vote is a tie, which would lead to a majority or not. At that point, the chair has the decision. They could either be for it or against it. So that is kind of the only way the chair can have input, unless it's a ruling. So in general terms, the chair would remain impartial besides that. Now, as you can see, none of these motions have a voting for unanimous consent. So how can we actually use that? Let's say that the secretary needs to state a lengthy resolution. A resolution is a set of motions combined into practically one, but it does have some other nuances of reading them individually or amending them individually, and also some other stuff. So it's kind of like a specialized main motion per se. But let's say the chair states, are there any objections to dispense the reading of the resolution? Now, if someone says I object, that means that they don't want the reading to be dispensed, and they want it to actually be read. At which point it would go to then a vote, generally a majority vote, or in some cases it wouldn't go to a vote at all, and that's all it requires, just one objection. So, unanimous consent, right? Everyone would agree, and then that business would be passed, or what action they're stating would go on. But if there's one objection, right, one or more, then it goes to a formal vote, or there's no vote at all, and then it just moves on. Lastly, we have one more type of voting, which would be by a show of hands. We do not use a show of hands voting in our chapter, but you may have seen an ASB. This is generally used in small societies or assemblies where it may be a main motion or just a two-thirds that you don't want everyone to stand up or whatever the case may be. But it's not a widely accepted one just because of its applications. You will be not quizzed on it, but there will be probably some questions on it in an FPLA test about when to use it. You don't need to know a lot about it necessarily, but it's just used in small societies or small assemblies. That will conclude episode 4 on voting. Thank you for watching. The next episode will be going over bylaws.